Joining us now, the civil rights activist Martin Luther King III. Martin, thanks so much for joining us. What's your reaction to the tragic Trump rally shooting?
Well, first, my thoughts and prayers are with the former president and his family. Also, my condolences to the family that lost their loved one and those that are still recovering. This is another dark period that our nation is facing. And we have to intentionally decide that we're going to do differently and better. The nation must find a way to rise above division, fear, and hatred. And yet we've not identified that. But this gives us an opportunity, a unique opportunity, to say we're going to rise above this. We are so much better than the behavior we're exhibiting. We know in the political discourse and in the discourse in general, civility has been lost. Now is the time to reintroduce civility because we've got a number of months to go before throughout this election cycle.
Let's hope that happens. How does this moment, Martin, compare to the heightened tensions of 1968 when Robert Kennedy and your father, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., were assassinated?
Well, in a real sense, the same kind of hostility and hatred is still being propagated in our society. And so while we shouldn't, we certainly are greatly disappointed. We shouldn't be surprised when the climate is what it is today. I think that I know that humankind is far better than the way we're exhibiting ourselves today. As I said, we often have seen civility exist. And whenever there's a crisis in the nation and the world, a natural disaster, Americans are some of the first to come to the table to address those issues. We got to find out, how do we turn to each other and stop turning on each other? Currently, the climate is to turn on each other if we don't agree. Dad and Mom showed us how to disagree without being disagreeable. That spirit must emerge once again.
We all have to learn from that. In the last 24 hours, Martin, we've seen calls for unity from both President Biden and former President Donald Trump. Do you think that message, though, will be heard?
Wolf, I certainly hope so. I think from rational and reasonable individuals, yes. And I think that on all sides, that must happen. There's an old story, and this is, where what I see about a grandmother and her daughter. My wife often shares this story. And there are two wolves that are fighting inside. One that's hostility, hatred, and then there's the other one of love and forgiveness and peace and justice. And the kid asked her grandmother, "Grandmother, what am I going to do? These wolves are fighting. Who's going to win?" And the grandmother simply says, "It's the wolf you feed." So when we feed the flames of justice and righteousness and peace and truth, that is how we get to what my father called the beloved community and my mother. I hope and pray that our nation chooses to take that path. We can, but we must be intentional.
What would you hope to hear tonight from President Biden, Martin, when he addresses the nation from the White House Oval Office?
Well, I think the president has already started stating that we must come together. And that really means on all sides. We don't have the luxury of continuing down this path. This path, we will not survive. In fact, Dad would say we must learn nonviolence or we may face non-existence. Maybe it feels like we are headed in the direction of non-existence. What we're doing is not sustainable, but we know that we can do things that will be sustainable for now and for generations yet unborn. And I think the president has to certainly set that tone.
Do you think, Martin, the heightened political rhetoric in our country has contributed to this assassination attempt?
Well, there's no question that the rhetoric has contributed. I believe that it took us to a new level of non-civility. And that's why I say now is the time. We have an opportunity to re-bring civility into the political landscape. And it must be done by all candidates, both parties.
Give us a sense, and I'll leave you with this, Martin, the deep polarization in our politics right now. Is this something new, or have we all gone through this before?
I think it may be at a level that is beyond hostile. If, as you noticed in the filming yesterday, for example, when people were scrambling and running, rightly so, you heard people having viciousness exhibited toward the media. I don't know what it was specifically about, but I certainly heard curse words. And I'm like, okay, I understand us being angry and frustrated, but how does this serve the situation? By denigrating, and maybe something happened that we just don't know about. All of that rhetoric has to change. There is a way we can reach out and communicate as human beings at a higher human level than what we're doing today. We are God's highest creation. We should act like that.
Martin Luther King III, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Wolf.
And coming up,